Welcome back, everyone, to our ongoing weekday morning study of the Zohar. 25 years in the doing, every weekday morning for the past 25 years. Every weekday morning, 25 years, studying the Zohar, volume by volume, section by section, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence, and word by word. Past 25 years, every weekday morning. Welcome, Vigili. It's good to see you. Your son will unread you, of course. There you go. So welcome to this monumental project that all of us have been engaged in. We've covered a complete summary of the highlights of the Zohar, the 5 volumes, prepared and translated by Daniel Chain and Matt. A great work. That took us a couple of years. Then we went through volume 1, then volume 2, then volume 3, and now we are in volume 4. At this rate, what we need is probably, it takes us about 5 years to complete each volume. So since we've just begun volume 4, it'll be 5 years of volume for the 5. Means that God has got to grant me another 10 years of life to complete this project. And Baruch Hashem, of course I'm 80 now, as you know. That'll bring me up to 90. And hopefully I'll be able to read and teach it. but I'm sure. So let's get back then to this study of the Zohar, this vibrant, alive study of the Zohar that we've been doing. Now, let me point out that other teachers teach the Zohar, but the way they teach it is each time they teach it, they teach something from volume 1, and the next time they'll teach something from volume 3, and the next time they'll teach something from volume 2. And that's all right, that's just their way of teaching it. That is not my way of teaching it, our way of teaching it. Our way of teaching it, again, is fairly unique, and that is volume by volume, cover by cover, cover to cover, section by section, paragraph by paragraph, sentence by sentence, and word by word. It's been a remarkable journey so far, and there's every reason to believe it's going to get even more remarkable as we go on. We left off in the Zohar with the Zohar speaking of the brain. The brain. Now, you may not find that remarkable, although I think most of you do. The Zohar, at the very least, was set down in the 13th century. By tradition and by belief and by some evidence, it was actually set down first by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the 3rd century A.D. Now, whether it was the 3rd century A.D. or the 13th century A.D. by Rabbi Moshe de Leon, who found the manuscripts he claimed of Shimon Bar Yochai and reproduced them, doesn't matter. It's talking about the brain at a time when most Europeans still painted their bodies blue and hung from tree limbs. I love when I tell this to some people who just are determined not to understand whatever it is we teach. I say, but they didn't know about the brain back then. Duh, that's the point, dummy. They didn't know about the brain back then, but the Zohar did, as did even older works of oral Torah before the Zohar. Sefer Bahir, even older than the Zohar, one of the oldest works of oral Torah, says the entire body exists for the sake of the brain. And the Holy Spirit hovers above the brain like a small bird above her nest. But they didn't know about the brain back then. Right, they didn't. The Zohar did. describes it as if whoever is writing this down had a cross-section of the brain in front of them. Remember, 3rd century or even probably more likely 13th century. It says, assuredly there is shell within shell. Well, that's exactly what a cross-section of the brain looks like. And even if it were the 13th century, I can guarantee you, he didn't have any cross-section of the brain in front of him. Assuredly there is shell within shell for protection, or rather, as we have said, there is brain within brain. That's absolutely true. There's the cortex, midbrain, and primitive brain. 3 brains are contained within the one brain. It's exactly what. Now, to us, knowing all this from childhood, we've been taught it in grammar school. It doesn't seem so remarkable, but you have to place it within the context of the Zohar and its own history. Well, what are you saying? That they cut open a brain and so? No. I'm saying they didn't need to cut open a brain. That the brain was revealing itself to them. And they were writing down what the brain was revealing to them in their visioning. Oh, that's ridiculous. The brain can't communicate. I beg your pardon. The brain can't communicate? What the fuck do you think does everything? Do you think my talking now comes from me? The brain is doing it, not me. When I move my hand, do you think it's my hand doing it? Or me doing it? It's the brain doing it. Don't tell me the brain can't talk back to us. It does. It's a living, breathing entity from which everything comes. So if we attempt to connect with the brain, with the untapped mystery and the untapped intelligence of the brain, we can, and it will respond to us in thought, in visions. Scientists estimate, I believe, that we only use 10% of our brain. That 90% that we do not use is what is called higher intelligence, or even God. There it is, right there. And that's what's being discussed here in the Zohar. Assuredly, it says there is shell within the brain for protection. Protection of what? Certainly not the person. For protection of the God brain, which is in there. Thus, there is goat's hair, then ram skin reddened, and then the firmaments of the shell. There are the tachash skins. These are powers which stand on the holy side, but are not yet in union with it. What this is doing is it's giving us a guided tour of the brain. And not only is it a guided tour, it's a guided meditation by which we can, in fact, vision these things that are being described here. They're called the outer firmaments within the shell, tachash skins. These are the powers which stand on the holy side, but are not in union with it. Now listen, if it stands on the holy side, but are not in union with it, they must be from the unholy side, which is what it's saying. There are standing on the holy side, the right-hand side of God, unholy elements, not yet connected to the holy side, but being capable of connecting. Even within the holy, there is the unholy. Even within the good, there is evil in God. As has been said before, the Zohar says, Abraham begat a son by, quote, the other wife, unquote, meaning the other side, whose name was Tachash, Genesis 22:24. A brother of Ishmael by his mother. So just as there is a celestial representative of Esau, another aspect of the left-hand side, so likewise is there one of Ishmael. Ishmael's mother begat Tachash from Abraham. For in spreading radiance on all things, the primordial light, as it shone forth on all sides, also shot forth sparks. The Nitzatzot. When it was established, God then stored it away. For whom? For the righteous one, that is to say, the Messiah. And all those tzaddikim who come before him. And why? For them, in order that it might bring forth fruit through and in them. Listen to what this is saying. Listen to what this is saying. This is a statement of cosmology, the cosmology of consciousness. This is the development of consciousness in God, the development of the brain, and everything coming out of it. There is a right side and a left side to the brain. There just is. Each side specializes in something a little more than the other. We know that. They both do the same thing, but the right side specializes in the more esoteric, darker, intuitive aspects of God. That's the right side. The left side specializes, of the brain, specializes in the rational aspects of God. So when it's talking about the right side and the left side here in the Zohar, it's talking about the right side and the left side of the brain, but as symbolic of the right side and the left side of the brain as those sides influence the side of God. The right side of the brain influences the left side of the body. The left side of the brain influences the right side of the body. This is all being told to us here in the Zohar. And when it says it begat Ishmael and it begat Esau, it's talking about the begetting of states of consciousness that were primarily left-hand states, as opposed to those which were right-hand states. And the fact that even those of the left-hand states of consciousness, such as Esau and Ishmael, from the side of Gevurah, from the side of power, judgment, darkness, even then, they were powers. And they were of the light. Ishmael was as much a power of the light, even though he came from the right-hand side of the brain, than his brother, Isaac, who came from the left-hand side of the brain. I hope that's not confusing you. Just as much a power of light. And then, when all those sides of God were made manifest, when it was established, God stored it away. All of this light, the black light and the white light, God stored away. The light of darkness and the light of illumination, both illuminating. When they both were created, finally God stored them away. And where? In the brain. And we know that for a fact because we can see them. You can see them. Shut your eyes and shut your mouth. Shut your eyes and look at what's going on the inside surface of your closed eyelids. And of course, if you did that, what you would see were splashes of light and blotches of light shining and flashing all over the place. That's coming from the brain. What you don't think of, and what you should know, is that when you open your eyes, they're still splashing out. It's just you don't see them because your eyelids are now open. But they're still out there, splashing around the light from the brain. They're only stopped from flashing out into the outer environment temporarily while the eyelids are closed. Once the eyelids open, it's like breaking open the dam. It all rushes right out into the outer environment. So everything around you is surrounded by this light of the brain. But especially from the tzaddikim, God stored it away. For whom? For the righteous. For those who are intentionally, knowingly in contact with the living light of God by doing the kinds of things I just described to you. And why for them? Why for the righteous? Now you'll notice there is an elitism here. This light is not stored away for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, every Jane and Doe. It is not. As much as the New Age wants to believe it is, even those who, what they call study the Zohar, even though they think everybody is equal to everybody else, that's not so. The light is stored away for the tzaddikim, for the righteous ones, not morally righteous. This has nothing to do with moral righteousness. It has nothing to do with religious righteousness. It has to do with God consciousness, living, breathing, God consciousness, just as Job finally attained to. How? By actually having a direct living encounter with God and having the shit kicked out of him by God and surviving it. By that, Job is counted among the tzaddikim, among the righteous. You'll notice that the three Edomite friends around Job, who were saying everything opposite to what Job was saying, they are not made the righteous. They are not made the tzaddikim by God, and in fact, they are cursed by God. Everyone is not counted among the righteous, much as the ego wants to think they are, or he is, or she is. When it was established, it says, the light, God stored it away. For whom? For the righteous. And why for them? In order that it might bring forth fruit through and in them. Jung speaks of this as the continuing incarnation of God. The continuing incarnation of God only takes place in the living vessels who have prepared themselves to be vessels for the continuing incarnation of God by encountering the living God fully. Remember, Job says after he's gotten the shit kicked out of him by God, I am the man who obscured your designs with my empty-headed words. I knew you before only by hearsay. But now, having seen you with my own eyes, face to face, I take back everything I have said, and in dust and ashes I repent. And God rewards Job for that by elevating him to the status of a tzaddik. He does. That's exactly what you see God doing. And the other dudes that were surrounding Job, the three Edomites, who kept saying to Job, God does not punish anybody for nothing. He doesn't just go around punishing people. Those assholes, God turned to and said, I curse you for not speaking of me the way my son Job has done. And he condemns them. And what does he then do? He says, but bring a sacrifice, and my servant Job will make a sacrifice on your behalf, and I will forgive you, because he, my servant Job, who has become a tzaddik, asks me to. That's what we see here. For whom? For the righteous. And why for them? In order that the light might bring forth fruit through and in them. And so it was indeed. For they did bring forth fruit in the world. For Abraham and Sarah, quote, made souls, unquote, from Genesis 12:5. Not bodies, but souls. And as they made souls under the sign of holiness, so they also did under the sign of the other side, the unholiness. were it not for this impulse which Abraham planted in the other side, the side of evil, there would be no proselytes in the world. There would be none who come into the house of Israel from the side of the Gentiles, which must be done in order for God to be completed and made whole again. For were it not for this impulse which Abraham implanted in the Sitra Achra, the other side, there would be no Gentile proselytes in the world. Now that reference to proselytes are to what is called in the Zohar and elsewhere, proselytes at the gate. They are not converts to Judaism. It has nothing to do with the religion of Judaism. It didn't exist at the time the Zohar was being given. It deals with those who have come into a state of consciousness called the House of Israel. We'll continue with this tomorrow morning. Right now, let me ask you for your comments, your questions, your feedback. Raise your hands if you have any. I'm going to type a title for this. Please send it word for word as I type it. Spell every word exactly as I have spelled it, so that David doesn't type the title with misspellings in it. Now, raise your hands for comments. While you do, I'll think of a title. Go ahead, Yishai. Go ahead. There's the title. The light of God is stored away for the coming of the righteous. And please just cut and paste it so that there won't be any spelling errors. You saw it. Thanks, you saw it. God bless you. You saw it. Kick-ass supernova exegesis. What science learned today through technology, God revealed thousands of years ago through man's brain. That's exactly right. Well said. Felt like a deep sea diving, going deeper and deeper, for God's sake. Hallelujah. Thank you, Esau. Eloquently, beautifully, profoundly said. Oh, great. Thank you, Esau. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Shai, go ahead. Anyone else? Raise your hand if you have anything. Just wanted to make sure, he said. I know you do. Just wanted to make sure. Pardon me. For blowing my nose in your face. Gene Scott. I always thought that was so endearing. He would constantly blow his nose. Shy, go ahead. Anybody else? Raise your hand. I never thought that. What a man. What a man. I love him. God bless his soul. I'm sure God has blessed his soul. I'm sure. Thank you, son. Yishai, go ahead. He's sorely missed, man. Yishai, go ahead. Yishai, amazing God-logical hologram of holy and unholy description. And the righteous here are the God-conscious, not meticulous moralizers. Oh, that's excellent. Absolutely, Yishai. Thank you. Beautifully said. Thank you. All right, everyone. That takes us to the end of this class. Just to let you know what my day consists of. I'm bringing Maxie into the vet for a checkup. Nothing wrong with him at all. But being on the medication he's been on for the past year, he has to be checked every year to make sure it's okay to keep giving it to him. So that's what we're taking him in for. I hate going to the vet with him more than he hates even going for the vet. So if you don't hear from me tomorrow, it's because I ran away. No, everything will be fine. Any comments about that? Wish me luck.